All right, so today what we're going to talk about is the multi-year system of training. Essentially, this was it's a Russian system that was developed 60s, 70s, 80s. That essentially the main premise is that you do not train a beginner in the same way that you train a master, an advanced lifter, because of course if and that's obviously one of the main complaints against CrossFit is if you toss a beginner into a program that's designed for someone who has more experience, then they're much more likely to injure themselves, and of course an injury could potentially knock you out for life. It could literally seriously delay or prevent you from really building the kind of strength that you want to build. So what the multi-year system is essentially it's a graded system in which you start off with lighter work, GPP stuff, and you build up to training the way an expert does. So the way they would do it is they would start off these kids in very young, 10, 11, 12 years old, and in grade school, and they had much more extensive PE classes than we do. So these classes, they would teach these kids general physical education, and then after a few years of really building this athletic base, they would begin to sort them out based on their strengths and weaknesses. So they would say, oh, this guy's faster, this guy's stronger, this guy's better at running, this guy is more of an endurance athlete, stuff like that. And then they would begin to sort these people out into basically into sports based on those criteria. And then they would begin to train them as a novice in that sport, and then they'd begin to train them as an intermediate in that sport, and then they would begin to train them as an expert in that sport. So they had different systems of training for each level, and they had ranks as well, so that eventually the final that you're supposed to be working up to is master of sport, or even international master, which is essentially like a world record holder or someone who competes against other athletes around the world, and they train them differently each stage. So they start them off with sort of GPP work that's not really very specialized. It's just sort of building basic strength, endurance, kind of like a cardiovascular and like a good body composition to go with, building muscle to go with. And then they begin to really train them, so for example, as a powerlifter myself, you start off doing body composition, building muscle, building, just general endurance. You then transition into working with the main lifts, for maybe 6 reps or so, and then maybe 3 reps or so, in the 80% range. That's where you really start building strength. And then after a couple years of that, it really starts maxing out. So that's when you move on to, a more advanced program, like, for example, West Side, the Cube method, like the Smolov squat program, any of these advanced methods that we have that are that have been proven to be more useful with experts. And of course, the problem of if you try and do too much too soon, then that's a problem because you're likely to hurt yourself, or you're likely not to get maximum gains. And of course, that's a problem here in the U.S. because kids, particularly teenagers, they always want to know how the experts do it. So they say, "Oh, well, how did Arnold train? I want to look like Arnold." Or they say, like, how does Klokov train? I want to lift weights like Klokov. How does Konstantin Konstantinov's train? I want to deadlift world record like him. And the problem with that, of course, is that you can't train like them. They're master athletes. They are people who have been doing this for probably 10 years or so. If you were to try and train like them, you would hurt yourself. The question should not be how can I train like him. The question should be how can I train to end up like him. What can I do? What is best for me right now? And very often the answer is very different. For powerlifters in particular, like I was saying, again, there's, sort of the basic, like a 6 rep max, and then sort of like a 3 rep max. And then you build up to, West Side where you do a 1 rep max, and then you also do speed days, and you also do GPP. Strongmen also do rep days. It's about building up again to that point rather than simply trying to jump from one to the other. And yes, you know, maybe there are some people with good genetics who are able to sort of skip years or, you know, skip ahead to, you know, a point in the multi-year system rather than, you know, simply building their way up the way they're supposed to. But the multi-year system is it's the system that works. You know, it's the system that, you know, they developed, you know, with experience. They developed this over years of experience with lots of test subjects. They discovered that this was the best way to do things. And so, you know, you should really listen to that. And again, it's a problem in CrossFit, and it's a problem with, you know, teenagers who think that they can, you know, that they can lift the world. But it's a lesson that applies to everybody. You know, if you haven't been training for 10 years, you don't train like someone who's been training for 10 years. That's all there is to it. So yeah, everyone have a good night. Like the video, comment the video, you know, subscribe, send me comments, ask if you want to know anything. I'm always here. Have a good one.